Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the World's Greatest Schools webinar, number 4. Today, we're going to be talking about creating values and belief structures and systems. So we're really going to explore how the values and beliefs are integrated into your policies, your practices, your procedures, your decision making, and everything that drives your school is going to be based on your shared values and beliefs. Sounds simple. It is simple once it gets in place. But I'm so honored to have with us today two amazing educators, Scott Cavanillas.
Good morning, Park. Thank you.
Hey, and Jessica Delavine. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good morning.
And I'm Richard Parkhouse, as you know, Park. So want to be able to take this time to share with you again. If on the lower right-hand portion of the screen, we have the 4 layers and levels, which are the fundamentals of a world's greatest school. Our first 2 sessions, we covered shared values and beliefs and the culture of significance, creating a culture of significance where everyone matters. And today we're going to go to the next layer and talk about the structures and the systems. So looking at those 4 layers, what I have observed is that most schools will say, well, we have shared values and beliefs. The thing is, does everybody know what they are? Those are areas where I see it lacking. They have the belief statements, and they may say that they're in a handbook, or they may not know what they are. And if they can't repeat them, then really they're invaluable. And they're artwork on the walls we talked about in previous areas, our previous webinars. The other part, the culture of significance, most schools have celebrations. So you may be saying to yourself, well, we have the shared values and beliefs, and we have the culture of significance. And what we'd like to be able to do is help to fine tune those so that they are really simplified and get at the true essence of who you are and what you do. But today, and then our last seminar, is going to be really dealing with the areas that I'm not sure that exist in other schools, where you take your beliefs and values and integrate those into your instructions or your systems. So as we look at the greatness inside out transformation process, we see the 4 quadrants, and we take what's inside of me, which would be our personal values, beliefs, and my purpose, why I exist as a teacher, to where we have what you see on the outside, which is outside of me. So we look at this from the standpoint of, do my actions match my words? So what your beliefs and values are you actually demonstrating that on the outside? Then as we move towards this organizational behavior collectively, we want to go what's inside of us and to what is outside of us. Now, most schools that I have experience in dealing with personal values and beliefs is that everybody has values and beliefs. When we talk about what's important in education, we talk about what's important with the kids on your campus, who's important. We all have our own individual beliefs, which is a good thing. But collectively in an organization, if we have 100 staff members, then we have 100 different personal values and beliefs, which I'm not saying that we all have the same beliefs and values internally, but if we can take this step towards moving towards this, what is on the outside of us, then this is where the shared beliefs and this process takes place, where we can align everything that we do, whether it's our instructional policies and practices, our policies in terms of school-wide, our procedures, and our school traditions. So the greatness inside out model, this is what we do when we come in and work with a school, is we want to take a look at those, what's inside, and how do we develop universal language that is so simple and is so clear and so concise that your students and your families truly understand and agree with what it is that you're doing, especially now as we move through the crisis that we're dealing with. People want to know who you are and what the school consists of and what are people saying about schools now, because we're really questioning, I think, who we are and what we're doing and how we're doing it, and the distance learning and the exposure that parents are now seeing what teachers are doing within the classroom. And some are just, they're able to use the technology and it's just stellar. And then others are struggling with it. And some parents may be questioning, why is my school important? Well, this process now of the greatness inside out is just key. I believe it's optimum timing to be able to put this together, to be able to develop this language and communicate clear and concise to your students and your parents. So as we look at the last couple of webinars, the beliefs and values, an understanding that it moves into the culture of significance, and today Scott's going to lead us through the structures and the systems. They are really built upon one another. And if you try to go to systems and structures and systems without having the shared values and beliefs, it's not going to work. The reality is it's not going to work. And then on Thursday, our next webinar, when we get into the belief-driven learning, it's definitely not going to work unless you have this foundation laid out. And we clearly go through each one of these sequential steps. So we want to be able to talk about your shared beliefs and driving your discipline policies, your equity, your access, master scheduling, school budgeting allocations, and student support services. A lot of heavy lifting here, and these are not easy processes, but we have the man, the expert, that's going to be able to share with you how to take your shared values and beliefs and integrate those into your structures and your systems. So it's an honor to introduce the world's greatest principal, Scott Cavanillas. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Park. I was wondering, are we waiting for the expert to come on in, or
I know, we'll wait. We'll wait another day, and then we'll figure out who that person is.
I can't wait to hear what they have to say. I'm so excited. No, thank you, Park, and I really want to start with what you just said. Is that it is impossible to address the structures and systems in a belief-driven way without the values and beliefs. It doesn't happen. And another thing that I would say is, one of the things that you see on that list right now is equity and access. And we'll get more into that as we go along through this entire webinar series. Definitely when we get to the BDL portion of this. But equity and access is thrown out there a lot these days, which is great. And it should be. Because at the end, I really think as educators, and definitely as public school educators, that should be our charge, to provide all of our students with an even playing field in which all of their gifts and talents are acknowledged, recognized, considered, and I don't know what other words to use with that, but so when we talk about things like equity and access, and a lot of people like to throw out that term these days, I'm actually convinced now that there's no way to even have real equity and access without it being belief driven. Because what happens is you just start creating these structures that you believe are providing equity and access, but everyone is still working from their own individual beliefs and values. And so we might put in certain structures that we believe support students. We might put in certain structures that we believe provide opportunities, provide a certain amount of access for students. But until we truly have beliefs about the students that we serve and truly operate from those beliefs, then I would say that we'll always come up short in the area of equity and access. We have discipline policies on there because I know that that's a hot topic for most adult educators, and I never get more responses than I do than when we have a committee on discipline, a staff meeting on discipline, a parent meeting on discipline. Everyone is really, really excited to talk about how we're going to get kids to conform, rather than how we're going to get kids to fall back on their strengths, gifts, and talents to kind of take off. Master scheduling, we'll talk about that as we go through school budgeting and allocation, student support services. So kind of in moving forward here, what we've learned is that, and I think it's taking a minute here to move. There we go. What we've learned and what we've talked about is how are your beliefs and values represented in your learning, your school culture, your policies, your practices. Really what this is now is putting your words into action. I know of, and I've been a part of several schools, districts, and organizations that might have a set of core values, that might, very rarely do I ever see things about beliefs, but I will say they might have a vision. They might have a mission statement. They might have those things. But very rarely do their actions match up with the words from their mission statement, from their core values, from their vision statement. Usually it's something on the wall. It's something that we can refer to when we need to, but very rarely does it guide us. So now when we get into the structures and systems, now when we get into BDL, which is belief-driven learning, now it's really about putting those words into actions. And like Park said, it's impossible. It's impossible to do any of this without first understanding who you are, what you believe, and what you're about. So now when you get into the structures and systems, what we see very often is that the policies that we have in place are in direct conflict with the words that we have about students or our work, or whatever it may be. So when you see things like all students are gifted and talented, all students have futures, everyone needs a teacher, every day is an opportunity to be the greatest version of me. Those are the belief statements that we live by at Alvarado. So what I would ask is, how are those belief statements represented in your master schedule? In most cases, I can tell you everything I need to know, or that you even need to know about your school just by looking at your master schedule. Because if you believe that all students are gifted and talented, but then you have certain roadblocks and barriers for students to access certain courses in your school, then I don't know if you truly believe that all of your students are gifted and talented. And a lot of times there's qualifiers to this. There are qualifiers. So people say, oh yeah, all students are gifted and talented, but some students just lack the skills that they need to be in an Algebra 1 class. All students are gifted and talented, but they need to put forth more effort. And so with us, you can see that those belief statements begin and end where they do. Jessica, I'm sorry, anything that you'd like to throw in here?
No, just that as you were talking about with access and equity, if your belief statements are not represented in your master scheduling and all of those policies that build up your school, then that hypocrisy is almost doing it more of a disservice than anything. To be able to put up a poster that represents your school values and beliefs, but none of your actions are aligning with those statements that you're claiming as your belief statements, the kids can see right through that. And so it often becomes more detrimental to preach something and then for there to be an extremely evident disconnect between words and actions.
Absolutely. And I would even, the same way that Jessica has mentioned that, what I would say is, if you're going to do this, if you're going to establish a set of beliefs and values, then you better put them into action, because kids will call you out really quickly on them if you don't. Parents will do the same. So for us, we have, as you can see here, our belief statements, our honor values. These are the things that drive everything that we do at Alvarado. So what we've had to make sure is that all of our structures and systems are driven by these beliefs and values, that there's a direct connection between the two. Now, one thing I do want to say about that is, through this process of building a world's greatest school, and starting off with building your beliefs and values, then moving up to the next level of creating a culture of significance where everyone matters, and you really start the branding process there and the celebration process there and all of the different things that you do to really get your beliefs and values out and to start living through your beliefs and values. And then when you get to those structures and systems, here's what I would say is, I do not believe that you need to, once you establish, there's a reason why it's a process, why it's kind of a tiered thing, because once you establish your beliefs and values, that does not mean that you need to jump right into, now, okay, we got to just blow up all of our structures and systems and make sure that they directly align with our beliefs and values. You'll have opportunities as those come along. Park, I'm trying to move to the next screen here, but I don't know why it's not. There you go. Thank you. And so those opportunities will come your way. Okay. So we're not saying that establish your beliefs and values, create this culture of significance and blow up all of your structures and systems. That will be a lot for anyone to handle. But I will tell you that at some point during the school year, you're going to have conversations about discipline policies and practices. When you have those conversations, you should fall back on your beliefs and values and now make decisions based on those beliefs and values. For us at Alvarado, most, I don't want to say all, but most of our policies, procedures, practices, structures, and systems have changed over the course of 4 years because of our beliefs and values. So when you look at things like policies, procedures, practices, we make sure that everything is aligned through honor. So for our students, we all know, right? I work at a middle school. Students are 12, 13, and 14 years old. They're going to make bad decisions. A certain portion of them are going to make bad decisions. And then it's upon us on how we respond to those bad decisions. Do we want to use that as an opportunity to hammer them? Do we want to use it as an opportunity to belittle them? Do we want to use that as an opportunity to create a relationship? And let me actually say that a little differently. Once this happens, do we want to create and establish a positive or negative relationship based on this one experience that the student did, okay, or had, right? So if you create that negative experience or that negative relationship through this experience, I can promise you, you're going to see them on the very next day. And I can promise you, the more often you see them, the more difficult it will become, because you have lost trust with them. And because there is nothing to anchor your conversations in. That student comes in because they did something wrong. You are now lecturing to that student about what they did wrong. And you're not really, there's no real opportunities for learning there. But when you ground it in a set of beliefs and values, when you could look at the honor values and ask the students to please tell us, were you showing respect to this part? Were you following our value of ownership? Were you being open-hearted like our core values ask you to be? And so when you look, all of our things that deal with student discipline, student support, whatever it may be, honor is always thrown right into their face in a way of serving as a reminder, serving as a reflection tool. Okay, I'm not going to walk up, I'm going to slam this detention seat in front of a student, circle the letter R within a big red marker and say, you weren't being respectful today. Okay, that student knows that. That student needs some time to reflect upon that. Okay, and so when you see, we want to make sure that we're tying everything into honor. We're allowing our belief statements to drive everything. And this gives opportunities for students to own it, for students to really understand why these core values and why our beliefs are so important. Master scheduling, this is something that I talked about earlier. These 4 belief statements drive our master scheduling process, okay? And what I mean by that is when we're making decisions based on course offerings, when we are making decisions based on student access to certain courses, when we're making decisions based on student groupings, things like that, it all comes back to these 4 belief statements. So I will give you an example. In my personal experiences, I've had to deal with my own children who are now both in high school. And in their middle school experiences, some of their middle school experiences, they ran into situations where they wanted to be in an accelerated math class. And they had the grades to, I guess, support that. That teacher recommendation. They had done well on their assessments or whatever it may have been. But for some reason, neither my son nor daughter were originally placed in this accelerated math class. So I went to speak to somebody about this at the school, and they told me, well, we have 50 seats available, and unfortunately your son didn't qualify, and then your daughter didn't qualify. And so my question was, why do you only have 50 seats available for a class of 575 students? You've already narrowed this opportunity down to less than 10% of the class. And in my opinion, and how we do things at Alvarado, is if we have 300 kids that want to take a course, that drives our master schedule. We don't limit it. We don't say, no, we're only going to offer 2 sections of this, because essentially what you're saying is that your belief is only less than 10% of your kids are truly gifted and talented, right? So we use this to drive our master schedule. We have classes now that are inclusive. We started our school with, when first coming in, we had 1 leadership program that served about, I don't know, maybe 30 to 40 of our students. Now we have 3 leadership programs with over 100 students involved. And one of the courses, one of the classes, actually is a combination of our special ed students and gen ed students who based off of these beliefs, come together to make a beautiful, powerful leadership class. Now, if we wouldn't have had these belief statements to drive that, I'm not sure that we would have ever believed that we have students that can do that, that we have that our special ed students can do that, or our at-risk students can do that, or our English learner population can do that. We know that we usually find pockets for those students and don't allow them real access to everything that is offered at the school. Also, we have integrated honors at our school. So we don't follow criteria of GPA and teacher recommendation and scores on assessments. All of those different roadblocks and barriers, we don't use those to determine a student's future or a student's opportunity to take part in a certain class. We believe in student voice and choice. So if if a student who maybe has struggled in the past says, I really want to challenge myself, I really want to have that honors tag, then we're going to allow them those opportunities. And what we understand is that with them taking on that challenge, that's not the end of it. They're still going to need support through that class. Okay, so it's not a sink or swim thing. It's not, okay, you signed up for it, here you go, here's all this work now, figure it out. No, we understand still that even when taking on that honors tag or that honors course, whatever they may want to do, we still understand that we need to tap into their gifts and talents to provide them with really an equitable learning environment to where their gifts and talents are being utilized to access whatever information or learning or whatever that happens in the class. Jessica, I'm sorry, anything that you wanted to chime in about?
No, I mean, when we talk about equity and access, and I think, as you mentioned before, it's kind of a hot phrase right now, right? When we talk about things like that, and we talk about our belief statements driving our decision making with master schedules, I think that a good question to ask throughout that process is, what role, if you are part of a team putting together a master schedule, what role are you truly playing? Are you playing a role that takes those belief statements and puts them into action, or are you playing gatekeeper? Are you filtering certain groups of students out by, as you mentioned before, by placing them in silos, really, in different pockets of the school that kind of hold them back from determining what path is representative of their strengths and their gifts and talents?
Absolutely. In our mission to create a community of kinship at Alvarado, if we now separate students based on perceived ability levels, I think that is taking away from ever getting to that community of kinship. Because what we have said is that this group of students can do this, and this group of students can't. And the students, that'll definitely trickle down to the students. We will continue to paint that picture of who is gifted and talented and who is not. I mean, let's face it, guys, we have a program in our school system called Gifted and Talented Education that really insinuates that there is a small portion of students that actually have gifts and talents. At Alvarado and through Greatness Inside Out, we believe that everyone has gifts and talents. And so we want to make sure that, again, our practices, our structures, our systems, our actions are aligning with our words and aligning with our beliefs. I did press the next button, but let's see if it goes here.
Scott, in the meantime, I just want to throw in that one of my favorite things that you make sure to emphasize through decision-making processes is that it's not our role at the school to begin clipping wings.
1,000,000%. And I say it all the time, right? What happens is, from a very early age in education, you have the A and the B group, the early birds and the late birds. We use, and I'm sorry if this offends anyone, but we use those pink and blue cards to determine a student's future. We fall back on things like GPA when we know that a report card and any type of grades that we see, we know that I don't know of any school, including ours at this point, that has a very clear understanding of what a grading policy, what our grading policy is, or what any of those grades represent. yet we use those things to make decisions on students. And in the middle school level, we start doing that immediately. And again, at age 12, 13, and 14, we start making decisions for students. We start telling them that you are worthy of this math class and you're not worthy of this math class. You are worthy of this learning opportunity and you might not be worthy of this learning opportunity. And so essentially what you are doing is exactly what Jessica just said, is you're clipping their wings. Luckily, I knew the system enough to go in and fight for both of my kids so that they would have the opportunities to access those higher level courses, knowing how that plays out at a high school. So for us middle schoolers, we have to understand how that's going to play out at a high school, and I understand how it will play out in the high school, right? And so we need to understand that at the middle school level, that we need to do whatever we can to give these kids opportunities at this age to really explore their greatness, and really figure out what their gifts and talents are. So by the time they move on to the high school level and start thinking about higher education and college and stuff like that, that they're able to fall back on their gifts and talents. So again, as you see, this is our pyramid here, which is the fundamentals of a world's greatest school. Your structures and systems will then lead up to your instructional methods and classroom makeup and student grouping and all those other things that will be covered in our next webinar. What we really wanted to talk today about is how important it is for your beliefs and values to drive all of your structures and systems. And I will challenge you. I'll challenge you to go and look at your policies. Look at the policies that your district has. Look at the policies that your own school has. I would even say look at some of the policies you follow in your own classroom and tell me what they're anchored by, right? Because in most cases, they're going to be anchored by your own beliefs, how you might have been feeling on a particular day when you were developing them, or at a school or a district, it's going to be whichever group was able to be the loudest. And that could be very damaging for our students.
If we take a look at just two concepts, if we built the foundation of our schools, and what Scott and Jessica were just talking about is that if we just build it on the foundation that everyone is gifted and talented, if you take a look at the three of us, each of us has a unique set of gifts, talents, and skills, and it makes for a wonderful team because each of us brings something to the table. Well, if we put kids in a box and we're not allowing them to explore their greatness, then what are we doing to them? And what is the messaging? And what is their hope for the future? So just those two values of everyone is gifted and talented, and everyone has a future. If we can just build on those two foundational pieces, then all of these areas that you see on the screen, schools are complex organizations. And at a world's greatest schools, we understand that, but we're taking all of the steps to simplify the processes. So no matter what comes down from state or from district level, what we've done is find a way to simplify it based on our own unique set of shared beliefs and values, and then plug those items into our system so that it will function at an optimum level, because that's what this is all about, getting schools to function at an optimum level, whether it's inside or outside of the school community. So what we've done now is we've taken the steps to complete the fundamentals of a world's greatest school. Our next session, will be the belief-driven learning, which is the icing on the cake, if you will. And that session will be this coming Thursday. Jessica will just wow you with what she has brought to the table and how she and Scott have taken the values and beliefs and integrated into their instructional practices. It's absolutely phenomenal to watch teachers collaborate on this, on how they're going to utilize their beliefs and values in their various disciplines. It's amazing to watch kids, how they take the beliefs and values and apply it to their daily learning, which in turn affects their daily living. So as we head into these difficult times, kids are going to be looking out and reaching out for assistance and for help. And if we believe that this is going back to the way it was, and when we relaunch, reopen, if we don't take the steps to open up differently, I think we're going to really lose some kids. So thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for spending time with us and allowing us to share our passion with you, because this is what drives us and this is what we're about. And if we can help you or assist you in building a world's greatest school, please reach out to us. Our contact information is on the screen in front of you. We would love to be able to have a conversation to be able to help you understand in greater detail the fundamentals of a world's greatest school. So, Jessica, Scott, parting words?
No, just thank you for the time. Excited to continue sharing our learnings with you, and even excited to hear about yours.
Yeah, just thank you. I'm excited for the next session, and I mean, I'm excited to continue this work at Alvarado as well. There's just a solid foundation of what has been built with our shared values and beliefs. There's just an understanding of why we do what we do.
Thanks again, everybody. Just remember, every day is an opportunity to become the world's greatest version of yourself. Thank you. Take care. We'll see you next time.